If you think turn-based battles are predictable, Expedition 33 is ready to prove you wrong over and over and over again. It's by no means the first turn-based RPG to incorporate real-time elements in order to dodge and mitigate damage, but it goes further than any other RPG before it to ensure it's the most attention-demanding turn-based game of all time. I would never go so far as to describe something as the Dark Souls of blank, as I do have some standards when it comes to writing. What I will say, however, is that Expedition 33 is to Paper Mario what Dark Souls was to Ocarina of Time, taking a revolutionary yet rudimentary system and enhancing and perfecting it for the modern age. Paper Mario would often use visual cues to indicate the timing for button prompts, such as a meter for the hammer. Expedition 33 also uses UI cues to communicate the timing for offensive attacks, but where the two differ is in defense. Paper Mario's regular enemies didn't have a huge variety of attacks, often only using 2 or 3 unique attacks per enemy with consistent timing. However, the games made up for this by boasting an impressive variety of enemies so that the player was constantly adapting to new rhythms. This made individual battles easy and eventually monotonous once you'd gain a bit of experience in a new area. In contrast, Expedition 33 features a lesser variety of enemies, but each with an enormous amount of move variety. But I don't necessarily mean the amount of attacks they have, although by the end of the game I was counting 7 consecutive attacks by bosses, but the ways in which you, the player, respond to the attacks. See, Paper Mario only has one way to respond to attacks, with blocking. Well, some attacks can be jumped over to counter, but blocking is universal. Where Expedition 33 differs is that it often requires 4 distinct types of damage mitigation: blocking, parrying, jumping, and gradient dodging. While blocking and parrying are interchangeable, jumping and gradient dodging are responses to unique attacks and are the only method to avoid damage. This is significant because of the attack patterns in Expedition 33. While you still have to learn enemy tells to predict what their attack is going to execute, the later enemies all have lengthy attack chains that combine multiple attack types, forcing you to respond to combo chains that incorporate multiple types of damage mitigation. Where other turn-based RPGs are no stranger to multiple attack chains that require perfect dodging, Expedition 33 is the first game that mixes together multiple responses, creating a rhythmic dance that players have to respond to. Therefore, I'm not going to say the cliche phrase that Expedition 33 is the Dark Souls of turn-based RPGs, but I will declare that it's the Sekiro of turn-based RPGs. Because not only is the combat more about precision, but it's about reading and memorizing your opponent's attack patterns in the way that most Sekiro boss fights require. Like I said before, Paper Mario uses visual cues to indicate what the right times to attack and defend are, but Expedition 33 uses far more subtle tells for you to predict attacks, something that FromSoft players would be adept at, especially given the frightening speed and ferocity that regular enemies begin to dole out in the second act. The even greater comparison to Sekiro comes from how the game deliberately emphasizes parrying over blocking. Parries normally reward players with counters when performed successfully at the risk of a smaller window of error. For me and many other players, I'm fine with incurring the mitigated damage in exchange for more consistent results. But as a turn-based game, Expedition 33 offers a reward far more tantalizing than other genres are able to offer. More MP, or AP as it's referred to in-game. I don't know about you, but one of the biggest pains in RPGs for me is running out of mana in an in-game dungeon and being reduced to chipping away at encounters with a basic attack. As I also share the deluded psychology that despite having 80 mana potions and not having saved in 4 hours, I think to myself, but what if there's a real emergency? So by rewarding the player with mana points for every single parried attack, Expedition 33 is the game that finally pushed me over the edge and made me confront my anxiety of parrying. And since the game is forgiving with its difficulty options, I had a lot of time to practice the timings when certain enemies became overwhelming. However, that desperation offered a rare occurrence of story and gameplay integration in a turn-based game. Almost universally, turn-based games have an enormous barrier between gameplay and story, as in the character's universe, the combat is always happening in real time. While the same is true in Expedition 33, The relentless assault of enemies incorporates the desperate situations the characters find themselves in. With them being in an unfamiliar land, few in number, and having an impossible task before them, the stakes are appropriately hopeless, and the ferocious enemies help reinforce that perspective. With the recent release of Metaphor ReFantazio and Baldur's Gate 3 having massive mainstream success, I think it's fair to say that turn-based AAA games are back with a vengeance, and Expedition 33 is a worthy addition to their ranks. While Persona 5 and Yakuza Like a Dragon gave turn-based combat a stylish flair like they'd never seen before, Expedition 33 is the most mechanically revolutionary RPG since Undertale, with battles just as intense and frantic as that indie masterpiece created. To go back to the earlier Mario metaphor, Expedition 33 is the paintress that crafts a masterpiece on the canvas that is Paper Mario. For more essays on turn-based RPGs, here's one about how the materia system is at the core of Final Fantasy VII, and I'll be back in 2 days.